France had a chance to wrap up the championship on Saturday in Murrayfield. My name is Mark. Let's talk rugby. A bonus point win for France in Murrayfield on Saturday, and they would be confirmed champions. Still have the Grand Slam hopes alive as well. Scotland obviously don't want that to happen. So this game, Scotland versus France on Saturday, the 7th of March, it is a 2:10 kickoff. That's local time. So Ireland or UK time. So check your local listings for when it's on for you. That's Scottish Gas, Murrayfield in Edinburgh. The last year was France 35, Scotland 16. And then in 2024, Scotland 16, France 20. So a lot closer the last time these two played at Murrayfield. The odds are 15-4 for Scotland win, 7-2 on for France, so hot favourites, and then 35-1 for the draw. So yeah, looking at it, France obviously favourites. Scotland though, they do have a chance in it, and they were close last time. The two played there, as I said, and yeah, they just need maybe one or two balls to bounce their way, and maybe they could upset the odds in that one. But we're going to have a look at the two teams, and then we will talk about changes that they made and make a prediction as well. So let me pull up the teams here. So we're going to start with the Scotland team. So front row is Pierre Schoeman, George Turner, Darcy Ray. Second row then Gregor Brown and Scott Cummings. The back row, Matt Ferguson, Rory Darge and Jack Dempsey. Halfbacks, Ben White and Finn Russell. Left wing, Kyle Steyn. Centres, Sione Tuipulotu and Hugh Jones. Right wing, Darcy Graham. And fullback is Blair Kinghorn. On the bench then, have Ewan Ashman, Rory Sutherland, Xander Fagerson, Grant Gilchrist, Freddie Douglas, Josh Baelish, George Horn and Tom Jordan. Okay, so let's talk about changes that Scotland have made for this one. So 5 changes in all to the starting 15. You got Pierre Schoeman, George Turner and Darcy Ray all coming in to the front row. So all changed there. Gregor Brown moving to the second row from the back row because Jack Dempsey is back at 8. Then you have Darcy Graham in on the right wing with Steyn in on the left. Yeah, on the right wing with Steyn switching over to the left wing. Xander Fagerson drops down to the bench. Then we have Ewan Ashman, Rory Sutherland and Freddie Douglas coming onto the bench. And then Nathan Macbeth and Dave Cherry dropping out of the 23. So, yeah, not wholesale changes for Scotland, but certainly, 5 is certainly still a lot of changes. But when you consider that, they completely changed the front row, the rest of the team is kind of got fairly familiar, look to it, especially given that Dempsey was only out through injury. So he's just returning to the team rather than, I wouldn't really consider that a change, as it were, in terms of if he had been fit, for the last game, he probably would have played. So looking at that front row, we got Schoeman, Turner and Ray. So, it means we've got no Xander Ferguson in there for the first time. I think they said since 2017 or something, and they're starting 15. So that's a big change, obviously, for them. Schoeman, he's a crowd favourite. Always, you always hear like the cheers of Scoo when he's anywhere near the ball. George Turner coming in at hooker, not really surprised there because they seem to haven't settled on who the hooker is at the minute. So the fact that it keeps changing is not really surprising. And again, for me, I think probably the form hooker in Scotland isn't even in the Six Nations squad, and that would be Hiddleston from Glasgow. So yeah, expect that to change. Hopefully Hiddleston gets his go maybe in the summer, or or sometime before the end of the year, and is able to at least compete for the position, because if he's not in the squad, he's not really doing that at the minute. Then the second row, Gregor Brown in there with Scott Cummings. I think, Williamson, dropping, I think, isn't he down on the bench now? No, he's not actually on the bench. He drops out at 23. So, yeah, so Williamson did all right in there, but I think, with Dempsey coming in back into the back row, I think it makes sense for Brown to move back in there, and himself and Cummings have been a decent locking combination there. Then the back row, all across the Six Nations, there's tons of depth in every country, I think, in the back row, and got 3 quality operators in there. Matt Ferguson, I think he's done well in terms of, I think start of the tournament, he was more of a bench player, so he's taken his chance, especially that charge down against England that led to the Hugh Jones try that basically sealed the victory. Brilliant intervention from him there, and now he's in there starting as well, alongside Darge, who I think has been really good. Dempsey has been the big carry in the forwards for Scotland throughout the tournament, so having him back is definitely going to be a boon for them. Then, Ben White has been going well at 9. Finn Russell has looked, at his best, honestly, in this tournament. Producing some real magic, but also it's not just the magic, it's the fact that, he's doing the bread and butter of a 10 as well, keeping that back line ticking, and his variation in his kicking game has been really good for the team as well. Kyle Steyn, I think, has been pretty good throughout the tournament, and he's been switching wings. Normally you expect him to be on left wing. He was right wing last time out. He's back to the left again, and he gives you that ability in the air that obviously Van der Merwe doesn't give you. Maybe in terms of like finishing, Van der Merwe might, Van der Merwe does have the edge, I think, but Steyn, still he's strong. He can get over from, close range. So you got that there. I think overall, kicking, etc., defensively, he is a better option there, I think, than Van der Merwe. Then Tuipulotu and Jones, arguably the best centre combination in Europe. Well, I think they are the best centre combination in Europe over the last couple of years. And, if they click, they can really give Scotland a chance in this game. Darcy Graham, gets a return to the team. He got a try last time out. They want him to get, at least one in this one as well. Again, if Scotland are going to have a chance, guys like him have to turn up. They have to perform, as does Blair Kinghorn from 15 as well. He'll know a lot of these guys in the French team from, Toulouse, but also he's really important for Scotland. They had Tom Jordan there at 15 to start the tournament, but I think Kinghorn gives you that little bit extra because he can be the second playmaker the way Jordan was, but also he has that out and out pace that makes him a threat and means that he can fix defenses when he comes into the line, and he can get the likes of a Darcy Graham or a Steyn free out in the wings, or if they're kind of a little bit further in, he can, release maybe Tuipulotu or Jones as well. So, I think he's going to, if Scotland are going to have a chance in this, he has to have a really good game, I think. Then off the bench, you've got a decent front row coming on. You've got Ewan Ashman, Sutherland, and Xander Fagerson, who absolutely want to prove a point when he comes off the bench. Then you got Gilchrist, Freddie Douglas, who expect to have a decent game off the bench as well. Josh Baelish there. Then you got George Horn, who has been really good off the bench, and I expect when he comes on, Scotland will pick up the pace, and against potentially tired legs on both sides, certainly. that, he may be able to make hay with some quick plays, some quick thinking as well. And then Tom Jordan there, as your cover. Interesting to see where he's going to come on, because he can cover a number of positions. And if he comes on, is it going to be a direct swap for someone, or are there going to be positional changes in the back line as well? But overall, it's a decent Scotland team, and it's a team, you look at the talent in there, and again, you wonder, like, how have they not really challenged for a Six Nations title? They could completely change that on Saturday, because if they beat France, they are in the mix. Because a lot of people are talking about, oh yeah, if Scotland beat France, they're doing Ireland a favour. But they're not really realising that, like, Scotland are ahead of Ireland at the table. So if Scotland beat France, Scotland are absolutely back in the mix to win the championship more than Ireland, because Scotland, if they beat France, then they're going into the final game knowing that they've actually got a chance to pipping France to the title. Whereas for Ireland, needs Scotland to beat France, and then they also need France not to get a bonus point in that game, and not to beat England, or not to beat England with a bonus point. So, Ireland's route to the title is, because they're a couple of points behind Scotland, is, much more difficult. So we've got to remember that, it's not a case of Scotland doing Ireland a favour. Scotland will be doing themselves a favour. And, if they win that game, then they pretty much guarantee themselves a top 3 finish, which would be a massive step forward for them. And then depending on how the final round goes after that, then could be lifting the title. They could be winning a Triple Crown. They could be finishing second in the tournament as well. So, there's a lot to play for Scotland in this one. And they're not going to be thinking at all about doing favours for anyone else. But yeah, that's their team. So let's now have a look at the French team. So front row is Jean-Baptiste Gros, then Julien Marchand and Dorian Alderweireld. The second row, Charles Olivon and Michael Guillard. Back row is Francois Cross, Oscar Jeju and Anthony Jolange. Halfbacks, Anton Dupont and Mathieu Jalabert. Left wing, Louis Bielbieri. Centres, Yoram Mofana and Nicolas Deporter. Right wing, Teo Atasogbe, and fullback is Tom Ramos. Then on the bench, we got Peto Mauvaka, Rodrigo Netti, Demba Bamba, Thibaut Flamand, Emmanuel Miafu, Lenny Nauchi, Baptiste Serran, and Pierre-Louis Baresi. So, talk about talent, like, that is just dripping in talent there. Like, and it's hard to pick a player who's not, in the running for the best performer's position throughout the tournament as well. I think every single one of those players have a shout for being in the 23 of the tournament. And we look then at the changes that France have made. So Olivon and Guillard back in the second row. Then Jalabert returns at 10 after, a late withdrawal against Italy, where Ramos had to fill in for him. Then we got Mofana and Deporter back in the centres. Flamand and Emmanuel Miafu dropping back to the bench, and having those guys coming on, like, is going to be, a real boom for them. Then Bamba on the bench in place of Colombe. So looking down through the team again, like, that front row, Gros, Marchand, Alderweireld, they've done really well through the tournament. They stood up, I thought, well against Italy in the scrum as well, because, the whole talk of it was Italy best scrum in the tournament, and they certainly were. They certainly are. And they put it up to France, but they did not get everything their own way. And these guys have to be given massive credit for that. Then you got Olivon and Guillard returning to, the locking combination there. And, those guys are going to come in with impetus, I think. They've been excellent through the tournament as well. Then that back row, Francois Crowe, Jeju and Jalange, again, just excellent. And the balance of that back row is so good as well. That's, one of the things with a lot of the teams here, as I said previously when we were talking about Scotland, a lot of teams have lots of talent in the back row, but it's getting that balance right. And I think France have absolutely nailed that. Then you got Antoine Dupont, maybe not the standout star of the team as he has been in the past. He's still playing to a really high standard though, and I think it's more that everyone else has lifted their performances so that he doesn't look like he's so far ahead of everyone else. But the guy is still an absolute wizard, and still really doing a great job there as well, keeping that ball, moving, making sure that it's very hard for opposition to get any kind of sniff at a turnover, and then just being super dangerous in pretty much anything that he does. Jalabert back in at 10, so just going to be more danger there. Obviously he brings a very different game than Ramos, who was filling in, and we've seen that throughout the tournament so far. And the fact that you have both Dupont and Jalabert who can make things happen at halfback there, is going to make it really difficult for Scotland. Louis Bielbiari, got to be up there as potentially one of the players of the tournament. And how many Six Nations games in a row now has he scored a try? So he's at, as I said before, he's at that kind of Will Jordan level now. Once he puts on a test shirt, you basically just chalk him down for a try because he's going to get it at some stage during the game, and it could be a really important one as well if this is going to be a close one, the way it was in 2024. Then Mo Fana and Deporter coming back into the centres, just again showing how much depth and talent France have. Being able to, the guys that come in before, did a fantastic job. Brouwerie, etc. But these two just come back in, and they're going to perform as well. Then Atasogbe, had to fill in at fullback last time, did an okay job, but I'm certain he's going to be a lot happier back on his right wing, as I think will be Ramos at 15 as well. I know he probably likes playing 10, but he certainly looks more comfortable to me at 15. Then off the bench, front row, Mauvaka, Neti, Bamba. So it's going to be interesting when we talk about who's on the bench for Scotland, especially Xander Fagerson, who's going to get the upper hand when those guys come on. Then you got Flamon and Miafu. Both of those are going to have massive impacts off the bench. Flamon, he's so athletic, and then Miafu, just that power and that ability to get over from close range that he's shown already during the tournament. So if Scotland are maybe defending a lead, he might be the guy that gets over for the decisive score for France. Then you got Noki, who's been good off the bench all throughout, dominant tackles. He's been right up there in terms of that. So he's going to bring real abrasiveness off the bench as well. Then Serran, where is he going to come on? Because, is it going to be a straight swap for Dupont? Because we've seen it come on, in other positions previously. So that's going to be interesting. And then you got Baresi there covering a number of positions as well. So, you look at that bench and think there's not going to be much drop off, honestly, when those guys come on in terms of the quality. And then obviously fresh legs is going to lift the performance as well. So you look at the two benches and say you expect maybe more from the French bench, but there are some real standouts on that Scotland bench as well. So if it's a close game, for Scotland to win, you think that some guys are going to have some of their best games ever in a Scotland shirt off that bench. But yeah, overall, it's a tough one to call. And it's a weird one as well, because my gut is saying that Scotland are actually going to pull something off here. And, Scotland have been, I think their style, they've been close to France in the past, and they have more than most other teams, I think, in the Six Nations. They have that ability that even if they're like 2 or 3 scores behind, they know that they can score in bursts. They can score 2 or 3 tries in 10 or 15 minutes of play, which I don't think, we saw Ireland couldn't do it against France when they had that momentum in the second half. They got a little bit closer, and then France, ripped the momentum back off them. But Scotland has shown it against France previously. They've shown against England as well that they have that ability to really come roaring back into a game. So Scotland aren't going to really feel like they're ever out of the game, and that could be dangerous for France if they take the foot off the gas. So, France, it's going to, for them, an 80-minute performance, and it might mean that they actually end up winning well. But I think if they have a lapse of even 10 or 15 minutes, they're going to let Scotland back into the game if they're leading. If Scotland have the lead and they are kind of defending a lead late on, that will be a little more difficult for them. But those players have shown for Glasgow recently that they have that in their locker as well to be able to do that. Maybe not as much as they would like in a Scotland shirt, but they certainly have the mental capacity to do that. But again, I just have this feeling that Scotland are going to do something in this game, but I've got to go with my head, and I'm going to say it's going to be a France win, but it's going to be a very close one.